mom's election to a New York City Council seat this week is actually incredible karma. This is a young man who, along with 4 of his friends as teenagers, 14, 15-year-old kids, were convicted of gang rape in a case in New York that became called the Central Park Five. Donald Trump, none other than Donald Trump, took out full-page ads in multiple newspapers calling for these 5 kids to receive the death penalty for something that they didn't do. Years later, the crime was actually solved. Another person was guilty of the rape, but they had lost years of their lives. These young men spent 6 to 13 years behind bars. And so the fact that he still had an interest in serving the people of New York, still had an interest in public service, and ran for office and then won at a time when Donald Trump, his former tormentor, is facing 91 criminal counts and the possible loss of his ability to even do business in the state of New York. I think most people would call that.
A Columbia juvenile corrections officer is no longer with the Department of Juvenile Justice after being arrested for giving contraband to children. Officials say 23-year-old Alicia Johnson is facing several charges, including furnishing contraband to a juvenile. Investigators say Johnson provided youth with various vape pens. She's being held at the Alvin Estlin Detention Center as the investigation continues.
Community leaders who are urging state leaders to take action on juvenile crime in Maryland. Fox 45's Amy Simpson is live in Randallstown in Baltimore County as another voice emerges in the fight for public safety. Amy?
Yes, from stolen cars to armed robberies, a community leader here in Randallstown is questioning where's the urgency to fix this. Ryan Coleman has reached a breaking point.
Enough is enough.
The president of the Randallstown NAACP says his community does not feel safe, continuing to be victimized by kids and teens committing crimes.
They don't understand why it hasn't been addressed. They don't understand what's taking so long.
Frustrated that young offenders, even when they are caught, are often released back into society with barely a slap on the wrist.
There seems to be an undercurrent of not wanting to really hold juveniles accountable.
Now he's asking, where's the urgency to fix this? Before things, this letter to Maryland's Department of Juvenile Services this week, calling on the agency to act, pointing to recent crimes in the region involving kids and teens. Like last week's incident in Northeast Baltimore County, a 15 and 16-year-old armed with a gun, robbing someone outside of a Walmart. Coleman's letter claims the suspects were released to their parents hours later. The letter also pointing to last week's violent attack caught on camera in Baltimore City. A 12 and 14-year-old violently assaulted a woman on her way home. The teens arrested and, according to the victim, released within hours.
We really need DJS to, number one, help these children and make sure that the public is safe. And they're doing neither.
The actions of DJS do not rehabilitate black children and, in fact, unleashes them on the black community. This community leader wrote in part, "My community is tired of policymakers not listening, invoking equality to explain their actions while reinforcing the status quo." Coleman calling on DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi to help these at-risk kids, but also help the public feel safe again in their own neighborhoods.
We hope to hear back from him, but more than hearing back from him, we want something to be done.
And Mary Kai, just within the last hour, a DJS spokesperson telling me in an emailed statement, cautioning that reports of juveniles being released solely based on decisions made by the agency may be inaccurate, going on to say that DJS is always re-examining its policies on how to keep young people and communities safe. Their full statement is up on foxbaltimore.com. We're live in Randallstown. Amy Simpson, Fox.
In the midst of this juvenile crime, pressure is mounting on lawmakers in Annapolis to better hold young people accountable. Alexa Ashwell continues our team coverage with legislation that could be seen early next year. Alexa?
Yes, Kai, and one piece of legislation slated to be introduced this upcoming session centers on young people and auto thefts, a big issue here in the city.
We've seen it captured on surveillance and heard from victim.
He tackled me and then punched me in the head.
After victim.
I'm mad. I'm watching 4 little kids, maybe 15, 16, jump out of a car 1:30 in the morning.
The fear and frustration surrounding juveniles committing crimes, often violent crimes, followed by little to no consequence.
All of this youth running rampant, it's out of hand. And we are paying the price in every way. My car insurance is going up. I gotta stay in the window looking and hoping and praying. We don't go anywhere anymore. You're scared to death to step out your door.
Prosecutors and police across the state have joined calls for change to juvenile justice laws. They say keep them from holding young people accountable for certain crimes, regardless of age.
They know that, nothing's really going to happen to them if they keep their crime in a certain limit of types of crime.
Juveniles who are accused of committing violent crimes, like carjacking, should be detained for some period of time until their case can be adjudicated. And they're not.
In Annapolis, Maryland State Delegate Nino Mangione says he's in the process of drafting up a bill that will be introduced this upcoming session in January.
I have a bill that makes stealing an automobile far more of a serious crime, regardless of age.
Mangione says the message must be loud and clear in order to serve as a deterrent.
What we need to do is start completely over with juvenile justice. Now, do we want to throw a kid's entire life away for a minor infraction? No. But if they harm or assault another person, there needs to be swift, serious repercussions.
I asked the delegate for details on his bill that he plans to introduce. He says he's still working on the language for it.
But first, the wave of car thefts in Baltimore continue as lawmakers grapple to find a solution. Residents are expressing their frustration.
Brad Bell, Jeff Abel, and Rebecca Pryor have the full details of these stories.
Let's first get to the rise in car thefts across Maryland. Rebecca Pryor live in Anne Arundel County at a special event. Rebecca, what's going on?
Yeah, well, we're here where Kias are getting anti-theft software upgrades, and we have seen a steady stream of cars coming in to do so today. This as thousands of Kias are targeted by theft this year.
I love my car.
For more than a decade, Bridget Colville's beloved Kia has been her trusted form of transportation.
It's a good car, very reliable.
But now her lack of trust in the car's anti-theft software,
it's a big concern no matter where you live now,
has taken her here. Throughout the weekend, Kia hosting a pop-up service center dedicated to installing new software designed to make it more difficult to use methods made popular by a viral TikTok challenge showing how easy the cars are to steal.
When they lock their doors, it makes it so the vehicle will not be able to start at that point. So even if somebody breaks in, pulls the cluster down and tries to get in there and turn it, it will not start.
It comes as car thefts taking off across the city. So far this year, Baltimore has seen more than 9,500 auto thefts, a more than 200% increase from this time last year.
When he got in the car, he was in there about a minute.
It happened in a matter of 60 seconds. Not even.
I was so upset. It just feels like a violation.
And according to police, the majority of cars stolen, Kias and Hyundais.
That's why our carjackings are done. The young people and criminals have just switched to stealing cars, which is easier now.
Baltimore joining more than a dozen cities across the country, suing the automakers for failing to equip their vehicles with proper anti-theft software in the first place. But while that lawsuit awaits its day in court,
so I try not to park where it's dark. When I park, I double the lock.
Drivers remaining on high alert.
Like boop, boop, boop.
Hoping these upgrades will truly pump the brakes on the ongoing theft.
So again, these software upgrades, they are completely free of charge and they only take about 20 minutes to install. This event's going to be going on all weekend long. For the details, you can find it in this story on our website at foxbaltimore.com. Reporting live, Rebecca Pryor.
We have continuing coverage tonight. Now that Marilyn Mosby has been convicted of 2 counts of perjury, Fox 45 News is looking at the verdict and what comes next. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Maxine Stryker. We have continuing team coverage on the guilty verdict tonight. Jeremy Eldridge from EN Lawyers is joining us live to break down the decision, a potential appeal, and what comes next.
But first, let's go to Fox 45's Amy Simpson as that reaction continues to come in. Amy?
Yes, Maxine, Kai, some keeping their words mild, saying things like the jury has spoken, but others, like Baltimore's police union, sharing some harsh words for Marilyn Mosby.
In 2019,
she was once Baltimore City's top prosecutor.
We want to say to the people of Baltimore, anything.
Now, a jury finds Maryland Mosby guilty of 2 federal perjury charges. And Baltimore's police union not mincing words after the conviction, taking to social media within an hour of Thursday's guilty verdict. Maryland Mosby brought a city to its knees almost a decade ago with her lies regarding the Freddie Gray case. The FOP3 said, in part, she continued her campaign to destroy the rule of law in Baltimore throughout her tenure as state's attorney. The police union ending its message saying, "Karma, Maryland." Mosby, who spent 8 years as Baltimore City state's attorney, made national headlines when she indicted 6 Baltimore police officers after the death of Freddie Gray in 2015.
We have probable cause to file criminal charges.
None of those officers were ever convicted. And in 2021, Mosby announced her office would no longer prosecute what she called low-level crimes.
Clearly, the data suggests that there is no public safety value in prosecuting these low-level offenses.
Maryland Mosby, rose to fame. She was truly the darling of the anti-cop left when, after the death of Freddie Gray.
Sergeant Betsy Smith, spokesperson for the National Police Association, speaking to these Mosby headlines seen across the country.
Was put up there as someone who was going to clean up the Baltimore City Police Department.
But also says the city's rank and file officers are taking notice.
I'm sure that there are police officers in Baltimore who are applauding the conviction of Maryland Mosby. But I've got to say that, you know what most cops are doing in Baltimore today? They're going out there, they're doing their jobs, they're risking their lives. And I think that they all probably have a lot of hope that they're going to have a better relationship with the prosecutor's office moving forward.
Maryland Mosby, from top prosecutor to convicted by a jury of her peers. A seismic rise and fall.
I know the FOP called it karma. I think I would call it our justice system at work.
And Maryland Mosby still faces a second trial for allegedly making false statements on a loan application, but no trial date has been announced. Reporting live tonight, Amy Simpson, Fox.
They treated him like an animal in there, really. He wasn't cleaned, he was left in his own mess.
The Independent has been following the story of Nicholas Thornton.
He's 28 years old, but for the past 10 years he's been in and out of institutions that can't meet his needs. One of more than 2,000 people with learning disabilities and autism who find themselves stuck in hospital for decades. With the help of his brother, he explained how this decade-long ordeal has impacted his life.
10 years of it, and mostly away from all family and friends. I've not seen a friend for 7 years.
Nicholas, who is autistic and has learning disabilities, told us what happens to him when he's placed in such unsuitable care facilities.
Sensory overload, and can have autism meltdowns. The alarms and the number of people, fluorescent lights. It's like torture that I can't get away from.
We met with Nicholas's sister Alex, who has been battling to get him the care he deserves.
He was a jolly, happy, bouncy child, full of life and very, very adventurous. He loved the dog shows, sailing, and just a lively, active boy. He liked his bike as well. He's not like that anymore, it's a shame.
Can you tell me a bit about some of the worst places he's been in and what it's like for you to have seen him in those places?
Boston Hospital was awful. They treated him like an animal in there, really. He wasn't cleaned, he was left in his own mess, and he was full of bed sores. and he went non-verbal after that.
United Lincolnshire Hospitals NHS Trust, which runs Boston Hospital, said that Nicholas's concerns were referred to the local safeguarding team. Their understanding is that his complaint was not upheld.
Then they stuck him in a dementia ward, which was quite frightening. It was in Birmingham. There was lots of noise. Another place in West Bromwich. He was left alone. He had no way of calling for help. He used to have to throw himself off the bed and thing. And when he left there, they put in a soiled pad in with his food. They said that they'd take him back to Essex, and he was put in a secure mental hospital in Rochford, and it's been hell ever since. And that hospital has had very, very bad reviews. They've been investigated and nothing's changed. He's autistic and he's not mental, you know, and he just needs to be in an environment that understands autism.
When you think about that and where Nick is now, what he's lost, how does that make you feel?
Awful, because nobody listens, or they try and appease you, but rarely anything gets done. His whole life has been stolen from him, really. I just want him to be happy.
Essex Partnership University NHS Foundation Trust said it cannot comment on individuals, but insisted patients were treated with care and compassion. Now Nicholas's mental health section has been lifted, there is no reason for him to be in a hospital unit, except one. Authorities can find nowhere else to house him where he can be cared for properly and given that chance at a life he so desperately wants.
I just don't understand why this happens to so many autistic people. Something needs to be done.
Judge reverses her decision to allow a teen found guilty of attempted second-degree murder to be released early.
Now 18-year-old Lionel Reynolds will be detained without the possibility of parole until he's 21. Chris Welty has more from the family of the man Reynolds shot and paralyzed.
Daryl Scott, who is paralyzed and wheelchair-bound, is making progress in rehab. In 2019, he was shot in the back during an armed robbery in New Orleans East. Lionel Reynolds, who was 13 at the time, was found guilty of attempted second-degree murder.
I've been working on short distances and things like that without using my chair, so crutches basically. So I've been working on using those a little bit more. Just short distances, maybe like from my car to my door to home, or from my car to my job. At least try to get more independent, get a feel for it.
During Thursday's court proceedings, the judge ordered Reynolds to look at Scott as he was speaking.
I told him that he had multiple chances. At the beginning, I was rooting for you, but you didn't do what you had to do. And I really it was just in my head that of all things that I could ask him, I wanted to ask him why. You were about to get out, so what was the point of your consequences? This is what it would be.
The Scott family was initially upset with Judge Candace Anderson for granting Reynolds a shorter sentence and the opportunity to live in a less secure facility.
As I told the judge 4 years ago, if you leave him here to 21, he does juvenile life. One thing we know, he will live to see 21 and get out. He will walk. He'll do anything he wants to do. Probably his record will be erased. With my grandson, Daryl won't walk again. Daryl's life is forever changed.
In September, Reynolds ran away from a halfway house in Lake Charles. The Scott family raised concerns when they were not immediately notified. Last month, Reynolds was arrested in Texas after a nearly 3-week search. Thursday, the judge met with the Scott family, noting Reynolds was given every opportunity
to admit that you made a mistake, and I know that what Judge Anderson did, it made me feel very good. I forgive her, and she had hope for Lionel. I just know that he was not remorseful. He was not ready.
Lionel Reynolds did not have any family present in court. The Scott family says that Reynolds' attorney stopped him from speaking when given the opportunity.
Lionel still has a chance to change if he wants to change. no matter what happened in his past, because there are people that has a past just like him and worse. You can change. You have to want to change.
We'll see when he gets out if he's changed.
At the New Orleans Juvenile Justice Center, Chris Welty, Fox 8 Local First.
Maryland Senate is now taking up growing concerns with the juvenile justice system and crime.
7 News on your side. We've been detailing the surge in teen crime and the rising toll of gun violence on victims who are now just younger and younger, it seems.
Our Maryland Bureau Chief Brad Bell takes a closer look at both sides of this issue.
We've shared the stories, record-setting numbers of carjackings by armed teenagers, spiking incidents of gun violence involving teens, and an increasing number of juvenile victims of homicide and non-fatal shootings. We've also heard from police who blame juvenile justice reform laws in Maryland for kids who do crimes not being held accountable.
Most of our offenders now we're finding are juveniles, and we can't interrogate them anymore with the Juvenile Act. So, they're in the system and they're back on the street. They're repeat offenders.
Feeling the heat, the Maryland House Judiciary Committee has held 2 juvenile justice fact-finding briefings, but so far has signaled no willingness to change any of the laws they've passed. Now, the powerful chair of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee says after doing his own fact-finding, he is open to tweaking some juvenile justice laws.
We see how things are implemented, how they're going, and if changes need to be made. So we're always open to change.
Montgomery County Senator William Smith says in particular, he's looking at the new law which prevents police from arresting anyone under 13.
If you're under 13, then you can certainly be arrested for a crime of violence. But other offenses that are not categorized as a crime of violence are also very serious. And I think maybe it's time to look at those crimes.
Examples include a 12-year-old who repeatedly steals cars, or the 12-year-old who made multiple bomb threats to schools and then told police he knew he couldn't be punished.
We as thoughtful lawmakers need to think about how we can get that individual the right services, supervision, and whether that we need to make a change.
But Smith also says he believes that a dysfunctional State Department of Juvenile Services, which fails to monitor and reform kids who get in trouble, for much of the current crime trends. And he says the legislature must address that issue immediately as well. In Annapolis, Brad Bell, 7 News.
Leaders are celebrating plans for the new FBI headquarters to be in Greenbelt, but Virginia leaders are crying foul over how the FBI offices were awarded. Even the FBI director expressing doubts. 7 News has team coverage of a tug-of-war over a multi-billion-dollar development that could change the fortunes of communities in our region. Jay Korf has the outrage in Virginia, but we want to begin with Maryland Bureau Chief Brad Bell, where leaders are ready for a long-haul battle to keep this win.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore leading dozens of federal, state, county, and local elected officials in what he calls a victory celebration over the decision to build a multi-billion-dollar FBI headquarters on this land next to the Greenbelt Metro Station, just inside the D.C. Beltway.
I cannot stress enough how big this is for Prince George's County.
But not all agree. FBI Director Chris Wray sending this letter to the GSA in October, alleging the decision-making process was tainted by a conflict of interest. Ultimately, the GSA rejecting that notion, and Moore and what he calls Team Maryland are insisting there is no turning back now.
There is no more conversation. There's no more deliberation. There's no more questioning. It's over. The FBI building will be coming to Maryland, and we could not be more excited, and we are ready.
Privately, though, several of the officials admit to me that they know the fight is by no means over, and they're still going to need to secure funding from an unpredictable Congress. But if everything does go smoothly, ground could be broken here in Greenbelt in about 3.5 years. In Greenbelt, Brad Bell, 7 News.
We recognize the service and sacrifice of our nation's veterans this weekend. It's also important to bring awareness to the struggles that many still face. As our Sam Ford explains, another hardship for hundreds of thousands of vets is unemployment.
As part of the city's Veterans Day observance, Mayor Bowser held a job fair for vets.
More than 2 million service members wouldn't get their paycheck. Long-term disaster recovery would be further delayed. Nutrition assistance for nearly 7 million women and children who rely on WIC would be jeopardized. Small businesses would lose out on more than $100 million a day in loans. We're talking about more than 1.5 million federal civilian employees by current estimates, roughly a quarter of whom are veterans, missing paychecks. Meat and food inspectors, Border Patrol agents, air traffic controllers, TSA agents, just a small example. Their bill includes devastating 30% cuts. You heard me, 30% cuts. It would eliminate 12,000 FBI agents, almost 1,000 ATF agents, and more than 500 local law enforcement. Kick almost 300,000 children out of Head Start. Rob more than 1 million seniors of nutrition services like Meals on Wheels.